In the constantly changing world of fundability, the big question is this: how are entrepreneurs and real estate investors like us, ones who want to grow our businesses and who are tired of paying for really expensive alternative lending, how do we tap into the most inexpensive money available and do it without the hassle of typical borrowing? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. Welcome to the Get Fundable podcast with your host, Merrill Chandler.
Okay, everybody. Wow, debt. What does debt mean? What are the nuances of debt? How can we get out from underneath debt? And how can we not? What actually makes us liable for debt? So we've got some great insider secrets and some things that you may never have known, or for some of you, things you wish you would have known. So let's start off here. First of all, let's talk about what is debt. We've talked about in my boot camps, the book, every time I open my mouth, I'm talking about debt. Well, there's two major kinds of debt, especially borrower debt, consumer debt. One are revolving accounts, and one is called installment loans. We explain all these in great detail in other previous parts of our podcast universe. But revolving debt is where you get a credit limit. You use that limit. You can charge it up, pay it off, charge it up, pay it off. And then you can make a minimum payment or pay the whole thing off, right? What most people don't know is that if you make a minimum payment on $10,000 worth of debt, it'll take you approximately 23 years, depending on the interest rate, 23 years to retire that debt. So that's just a did you know kind of factoid. On installment loans, the other type of debt is where you borrow an entire amount and then you make the same monthly payments. You can prepay it. Some have prepayment penalties, but you can prepay a loan, like an auto loan, a student loan, even a mortgage. You have to, but there are common monthly payments that are the same over a certain period of time called the term, right? So we have installment loans and revolving accounts or revolving credit. Now, here's the deal. The way you engage, and most people do this, but they don't know the context in which they're doing it. Most people engage a loan by filling out an application. And when you fill out the application, they pull your credit. And after they pull your credit, they run you through, generally speaking, automatic underwriting software. You're approved 30 seconds, 2 minutes. You're approved or denied. When you're approved, there's a tacit agreement until you actually take the card. Most of us back in the day used to have to sign for that credit card or that application. But right now, these days, when you fill out an application, the small print, the fine print of what you're getting back is the second you activate the card, that plus your electronic signature from your application is the contract. So sometimes it's only one thing that has to be done, but by and large, they carry your signature from the application over to the agreement. Notice when you get a new card and you're approved, they don't send you a form to sign and send it back. Okay, so that is where you have a contract. Now, contract law supersedes all other forms of agreements, and I'll get to that, including court orders. So we'll get to that in a second. So we have two types of debt, and you create a contract with this debt, and that contract is, how do we say it? That contract is for life, or until one or the other of you write a letter or communicate with the other person or the other party and terminate the relationship. So unless it's terminated, it is for life. And what I mean by for life is because there are, we're going to be talking about survivorship, how the 3 Ds, death, divorce, and disability, and how they impact this relationship you have with a lender. So a lender is anybody, of course, who lends you money. Sometimes they're called credit card issuers, like a Bank of America is a lender, it's a depository bank, and it's a credit card issuer. So these are roles that it plays. But lenders, that what we use to describe our relationship with this contractual relationship with them. Now remember, just be super clear. If you file an inquiry and activate the card, you have a contract. Problem is, when was the last time that you read the fine print of that particular contract? There is a lot of pages to it. They've tried to make it simple. What's called truth in lending laws have also tried to make, have forced banks to, and lenders to make the terms more easy to understand. So by and large, most credit instruments now, personal credit instruments, business, we can talk about later, most credit instruments come, most consumer personal borrower instruments have the notion that if you can have bullets of benefits or requirements, like the due date, time, and zone is outlined. What types, they may have bullets about what a balance transfer interest would be, what purchase interest would be. Even I had a Chase card where a cash advance was 26% interest per day. So because there were so many people complaining about not being able to read all the gobbledygook inside of these agreements, these contracts, they've lenders now, in the truth in lending, amended accordingly, has to put the essence of those agreements in bullet form, easy to understand. There's never been, in recent history, meaning like 2 decades, there hasn't been a single credit instrument, including a car purchase, where I have not read the entire purchase agreement, the entire financing agreement. But for 2 reasons. One, I want to know what I'm agreeing to. And more importantly, I do that. This is my jam, right? I want to get these things ready to go for you. And it was I don't know, a couple dozen episodes ago when I got my Chase Southwest business credit card. I actually put the agreements up on the screen so that we could walk through them and show how they are trying to educate the borrower and still not tell all the little nuances, right? So let's continue. So now you have a contract. You've engaged in this contract, not even by using it, by authorizing it, or by activating it. All right, that is your explicit agreement. Tacit agreement means that it's in the background when you filled out your application and did your electronic signature. The explicit agreement is when you activate the card. That is the intent to use. So why am I putting so much emphasis on this idea of a contract? Because contract law supersedes court orders by a judge. Okay, contract law is the most fundamental of all law. If you went the first semester of law school, which I didn't take, but I know the course contents, for the first semester is all about contract law, because it's the fundamental law, an agreement between 2 parties with terms and conditions. That is the essence of a contract. Well, here's what happens when you sign that you're going to abide by this cardholder agreement, your contract. A judge cannot pull the rug out from underneath that agreement. For example, we've alluded to this in different at times. I may have even told one of these stories before to illustrate a different point. But did you know that, let's say there's 2 spouses, is plural spice? Just kidding. Just wondering. There's 2 spouses who are in a divorce court seeking a divorce, and the judge says to spouse B, I'm looking at all the balance sheet of the family, and spouse B, you are in charge of paying this credit card. And spouse B says, yes, that's fair and equitable. And spouse A then says, or spouse B is like, all right, I got to pay it. Spouse A is now saying, oh, okay, that's cool, fair and equitable. But let's pretend, as though it's not really pretending, let's pretend that all of a sudden spouse B does not pay that credit card payment. Well, I have had innumerable clients come to me after the fact, because those who come to me before the fact get coached exactly the way I'm coaching you right now. Innumerable clients people have come to me and said, I got 30 days late, 60, 90 days. I got a charge off on this credit card, and I want you to remove it because I have a court order that says my spouse was supposed to pay this. And just like I'm doing right now to you, this is what I did to them. I'm sorry that you were not taught the rules of this game earlier. But because you have an agreement, and you're joint on this account, spouse A and spouse B are joint on the account. That means you are both, listen to the language, individually and severally responsible for repayment. Individually means they're not going to charge a spouse A, let's say there's a balance of $1,000. Spouse A is responsible for $1,000. Spouse B is responsible for $1,000. But what happens is spouse A and spouse B do not see eye to eye, and they're not going to collect the same amount from both. But each of them, A and B, each owe $1,000. If one of spouse A pays $500, there's only $500 balance left on that credit card, but both A and B are responsible for that $1,000. Let's go down to pay it down to $100. Spouse A pays some of the balance. Both parties, no matter who paid what, both parties in a joint account are responsible for that balance. That's what jointly and severally. That means everybody who is a party to that agreement. Now, these are for joint accounts. This is why I do not want, for revolving accounts, I don't want husbands and wives, spouse A, spouse B, partners on the same revolving account. Because if we're doing it right, we open those up and they last forever. We keep the right tier 1 cards open forever. We don't close them down like we would an auto loan or a mortgage. Those will be refinanced or end at some points. We sell the house and both parties are free of the obligation. So now here's what happens. We go back to our court scenario. Spouse B is charged by the court. It's a court order that spouse B pay for that credit card. But if spouse B does not, contract law demands that spouse A pay that bill, or both of them are going to have a 30, a 60, a 90-day late, and a charge-off if they do not rectify the situation. Now, guess what my coaching is in every one of these situations? You can either be right or you can be happy. And spouses, so many times, it just fascinates me, the human nature to say, no, the court said you have to pay that. I'm not going to pay it. And then they ruin their own credit because they don't handle it. Now, so just know, this is universal. There is no getting out of this in a court order. The only court order that is an exception to this is a bankruptcy court order, which terminates the debt. Okay, or at least Chapter 7 bankruptcy terminates it. We're not talking about that scenario. We're talking about a divorce court that says, by the way, spouse B is responsible for this debt. Spouse B says, screw spouse A, I'm not going to pay that debt. Well, spouse B is going to get bad credit on when it's 30 days late, and so is spouse B. It is the worst version of mutually assured destruction that there is. Now, here's the other fascinating thing, guys, is that the way to handle this is, as part of the divorce proceed, first of all, maintain a positive and fundable profile so that if you are considering, all right, let me back up even further upstream. So, when is the best time to plant an oak tree? 20 years ago. When's the next best time? Today. So, the first thing we want is for no couples, no partnerships to ever have revolving accounts that are joint. Ever. There's no reason for it. If you can both qualify together, you can qualify for each having your own. So no matter what, I don't care if you believe as a spouse you're going to be healthy, happy, and terrific and live forever. 100% of married persons 100% of married persons believe that they're going to be part of the 50% that don't get divorced. Okay. I'm not going to weigh in either way, but 50-50 is not good odds. So I'm giving this one to you for free. Under no circumstance, I do not know of any circumstances where you should be joint on a revolving account. Ever, guys. Ever. But if we didn't have that kind of education or foresight, if you didn't have me in your corner before you got the joint account, then the time is now to get rid of that joint account. The way you do it is you call up and say, hey, we want to each have our own account. They will run each of your credit to see what each of you can handle, and one of you may keep the current number, and another one would be given a different account and a different number and a different credit card. But the idea is that you should not be on a joint account for all of the reasons that we've been discussing. So if you don't ever do it, but if you've done it, separate, disjoin, call up your creditor and say, hey, I want to, and probably have a 720 or higher score to ensure success. And be sure each of you use household income when you are applying. Most lenders approve household income. But here's the thing. Let's say that now you're in divorce court and you don't have, you still have a joint account. Then your joint account, you need to make arrangements to disjoin that account as part of your divorce proceedings. You have to be amicable. One person may keep the account, the other may not. If you're on 2 or more joint accounts, then divvy them up. Who gets what, right? You can always just stop being without adult supervision and without additional coaching. I'm kind of giving you the broad strokes, but get out from that situation, because a derogatory account is worse than no account at all. No revolving account, no credit card is far better than having a derogatory account. Okay, at least for our purposes in trying to protect you. Now, in this divorce proceeding, you need to make sure that if partner B, spouse B, is ordered by the judge that they're responsible for this joint account, then talk to your divorce attorneys about making conditions of removal of account, disjoining the account as part of the divorce proceedings. Make it so that both parties have to stipulate to remove one of you from the thing or get your own accounts at the same lender. So that's one thing you can do. The other is, if you're not going to stipulate to disjoining the account as part of the divorce, then you need to know that if your spouse is responsible for a debt, you need to be on those emails. You need to be on those notifications so that if they don't pay it, you do. Now, you're saying, but the court ordered them. You can be right or happy, guys. I'm going to get exercised about this one. You can be right or you can be happy. And I'd rather you be happy. I'd rather you not have derogatory accounts so that you have a reason and excuse to keep pointing the finger at somebody who you're leaving for some reason or another, or is leaving you for some reason or another. Don't just add more conflict to this situation. We need to spin it down. We don't want to spin it up and get it more aggravated. So what you need to do is make it a part of the divorce decree. Listen carefully. Make it part of the divorce decree that should a party, an assigned party, an ordered party, not do their obligation under the divorce decree, that there is a penalty that they have to pay. And if you can't pay the bill, then they have to pay for credit repair services or stipulate some penalty for not maintaining their obligation. So that you, as the injured, what they call the injured party, can figure out a way to recoup the loss, okay? And fix your credit, do whatever you need to do. If you're my client, if you're my student, we're going to stay as far away from this process as possible, all right? Now, here's the thing. So you've got to put it as part of the agreement so that each party has the most amount of motivation to continue to pay the payment. Now, you also got to be human about this. I mean, like heart-filled, compassionate human. If for some reason there's a legitimate reason why your partner, your former spouse, can't make that bill, then you have to pay it. And then just make sure you stipulate in the divorce that there is a repayment of whatever interest and fees that you paid as the non-ordered party. Okay, that was a big sentence. As the non-ordered party, that means you're not responsible to the court to make the payment, but you are responsible to the lender to make the payment. So you just have to put into the divorce proceeding, guys. You got to put in the divorce proceeding that if you have to pay, the other party has to pay you back with some sort of penalty, because that way you keep the motivation up, but you're not ruining your credit to spite somebody. That's just ridiculous. We always hear the thing, don't spite your nose or cut off your nose to spite your face. Why would you ruin your fundability for 5 to 7 years? Remember we did the mortgage last week, 2 weeks ago, we did the mortgage episode where if you're at 820 and you do a 30, 60, 90, it takes you 5 to 7 years to get back to that 820. Why would you do that just because you're already splitting up from your spouse? Why not make it as clean a break as possible, or partner? So this is powerful juju, guys. Because now the other way that this harms you is if you're joint. So we talked about divorce. Just make sure you seek to be happy, not right. Because if too many couples have ruined their profiles for years because they didn't understand it or they wanted to fight about it. And I'm too, I don't know, maybe I'm a tin man. I am too dispassionate about this because I've seen the heartbreak that it brings. I see how many people's lives are ruined. They can't go get a house. You split up. You can't go get a house because you trash your credit with a 30 or 60, 90 day late because you didn't know that you believe the court instead of knowing what obligations you have and what the contract with a lender requires of you. And we don't know. Now, it's not your fault, but now you're listening to this. Now it's your fault You got to show up to make sure that you do it right. Now, we talked about, so that's divorce. Let's talk about the other two Ds in turn. Let's talk about death. In the unfortunate, and my heart goes out to those of you who have lost loved ones, especially a spouse, especially the spouses that we lost that we didn't want to divorce. I know I'm laughing, but I just think it's ironic. There are people out there who are dead set on separating. Rightly so. I want everybody to be happy, right? But they're dead set on separating and divorcing somebody. And then there are others of you who lost someone that you would have never divorced, nor do they you, in your entire life. We can lose them too. So let's talk about what the rights and the problems with joint accounts when it comes to death. And we'll throw in disability here as well. When a partner, someone who we are either a cosigner or a joint owner of an account, if our spouse passes, you are fully and absolutely obligated, unless you bought death insurance, with some auto loans do it, some mortgages always do it, pay off in case of death. But you're fully obligated on the mortgage, the auto, or the revolving account balance if you are a joint account. You lose your spouse, and then within the next 30 days, all of your bills come due. So we're adding financial trauma to a horrible, horrible situation. If you have individual accounts, if you have yours and she or he has his, you are not obligated upon the point of death, or at the point of death. I was like, your life will be threatened within an inch of your life. No. If you have individual accounts and your partner or your spouse passes, you are not liable for that partner or spouse balance. You are, if you had, I do recommend the life insurance for mortgages. Not so much on an auto loan if you have the resources, but if you are a let's say you're a full-time mom or a full-time dad, stay-at-home dad, and your spouse is the breadwinner, I would make sure that you have, for your big ticket items, that you have the insurance on those particular things. Some people call it a ripoff. I've seen way too many people pay way too high of a price, because once again, 1 30-day late, much less 2 or 3 of them, or 60, 90s and charge-offs, will make you unfundable for 5 to 7 years. That's not okay, especially if, because of death or disability, you're now the sole breadwinner for the family. Okay? How do you win bread? Bread earner, wage earner. How do you win bread? But my bacon bringer Homer. So the whole point of this is that you need to have separate, where possible, absolutely on revolving accounts, both personal and business, where possible, mortgages. I tell spouses, if they can afford it, to put a mortgage on one, and then the next mortgage is on the other, and split them. You can share them if you need to, and you don't have the resources to both have mortgages, or you're not in real estate investing, or like some of my clients where each of them are on multiple properties. But my point is that you do not want to be obligated to pay something if your partner has passed. The same is with disability. If your partner was a breadwinner, and all disabilities don't qualify for disability benefits, guys, from the Social Security Administration. You can be unemployable and not qualify for disability. So the question is how do, by separating these out, you at least cut in half your most dangerous debt load, and you will end up with half of it instead of all of it. Now, people ask me, well, yeah, but great. So my spouse dies, and I don't have to pay their debt because we have individual accounts. How is that a benefit? What else is there that I can benefit by that? And here's one of the things that is subtle, but I run into it with the clients, is that when you have a death or disability, if you are paying this, you're paying this bill, right? You're paying the auto payment, the credit card, and they pass. I tend to insure the more aggressive of, I'm not an insurance agent. I tend to recommend that the more outgoing, or the person who's more out of the house, or who has a more challenging or is more at risk, that you charge their account up before you charge the ones at home. I call it the person, the stay-at-home mom or stay-at-home dad, I call the nest egg borrower profile, whereas there is the risk taker borrower profile. So in the best scenarios, if you carry balances or carry loans or on the more aggressive, the more assertive, the more risk-taking partner in your partnership, one of two benefits come as a result. This sounds horrible. If one of them, if that person passes, then the more aggressively used credit also passes, and the stay-at-home mom or dad is not required for repayment. And then you have built this nest egg credit profile to launch again. Now, let's say you don't, no 3Ds, death, divorce, or disability. If you take risks with one profile and protect the other one, then you can relaunch that with that nest egg profile later, if the worst case scenario happens. And for partners or married persons, that's part of our soft landing, is we designate one of the partners as the soft landing profile to kind of reboot with, should anything happen to the more risk-taking profile. So you guys, I'm not an attorney, but I've probably been to more divorce proceedings, or had as clients individuals who brought me their paperwork showing the mess. I've been in the nth degree of these situations, and have recommended. I've approved language so that somebody who is my client could take it to their divorce attorney and include that language into the court proceedings. The bottom line here is that you can only lift someone from a height where you're already standing. You cannot reboot your borrower capacity. You cannot reboot your family finances. You cannot start over unless you are strong. Otherwise, you're going to be sitting at effect, and the wheels are going to be coming off of your finances, and you are no help to yourself or your children or your family or your loved ones. So, revolving accounts, being joint on them is bad. I even reduce it in our fundability matrix, and when we're valuing accounts, I reduce it by a full 20%, because that's how harmful it can be towards your profile. Do not have joint accounts. Divest those joint accounts as soon as you possibly can. If you're in the mid 600s together as a couple, then do what it takes to build your profiles together so that you can then divest them, because they will not let someone who is not fundable out of that agreement. They want as many parties responsible to pay that back as possible. So if you're in the mid 600s, high 600s, then do what it takes to make a fundable profile so you can separate your profiles. I want you completely separate. only engage mortgages or auto loans if you need both of your income to substantiate being able to afford the particular purchase. If you can get away with it, put one of you on one house, one of you on the other, or alternate. Do not both of you be on any credit instruments. And if you have to, it's okay on installments. There is no reason whatsoever for you to be joint on a revolving account. Whew. The 3Ds. I've been talking about 3Ds for 28 years now, and it's a thing. So take care of yourself, please. Take care of your loved ones. Play this funding game to win, and keep binging, because you continue to learn new rules and how to master this game and play it better and better and better. This is Merrill Chandler. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have a spectacular day. Disjoin your revolving accounts. Bye now.
Thank you for listening to the Get Fundable podcast. Please leave comments because Merrill would love to read about your aha moments from this episode. And be sure to visit getfundable.com to read our blog, get important links, join our community, and much, much more, like ordering Merrill's tell-all book that is changing the world, The New F Word. And you got to tell your friends about this podcast because we want them to get fundable too.